Everybody, welcome to Dr. Osborne Zone. We are going to be covering your questions today. If you missed Tuesday's show, we did a deep dive on the toxic effects of glyphosate. So make sure you go back and check that out. And just from the perspective of your own commentary, how many of you actually believe that this new executive order and this new decision is based in corrupt money handling across the aisle? I'd just like to know what your opinions are. So just type that in, chime that in. We'll also jump into your questions. So let's dive in. Hi, Dr. Osborne. I had a blood test and asked them to check my vitamin B12, and it came back at 1400, which is high. I've been taking B12 and folate together. How do I make the B12 go down? So great question, Marika. I would encourage you to understand that when you're measuring B12 in the serum, it's kind of worthless. It's not very good information, and here's why. If you're taking a supplement, so I don't know what dose your supplement has of vitamin B12 in it, but usually supplements with B12 range anywhere from, if we're talking about higher doses, 500 micrograms, all the way up to 5,000 micrograms. And so if you're taking something with that quantity, within a day, your B12 serum is going to start elevating usually above 1,200 is pretty typical in somebody who's actively supplementing. So it doesn't mean that you're toxic. There are no known toxicity reports of vitamin B12. So it's not like because your level's at 1,400, you have to worry about, oh no, it's doing damage or it's doing harm. Most of this stuff is going to be passed out through your urine with no harm at all. So, you know, anything above that is not really a concern or a major concern for toxicity. Now, how could you bring it down? Because that was your question. How do you bring it down? Stop supplementation. It's that simple. If you don't want to have super physiological levels of B12 floating around in your bloodstream, you just stop supplementation, and usually it'll come down within, you know, a day or two. It'll come down that fast. The question mark is, though, is why are you taking it? Do you need that much? And so if you really want to do accurate testing, this would not be the way I would encourage you to go about it. I've talked to your doctor about performing something called an INA. That's an intracellular nutrient analysis. And it's a type of blood test. So what they're doing is they're extracting a specialized type of cell out of your blood called a lymphocyte. And then they're monitoring that lymphocyte's growth based on the presence of adequate nutrients. It's an outcomes test that can tell you whether or not you need more, your cells will benefit from more vitamin B12, or whether there's no benefit to taking more vitamin B12. So doing something like this is going to give you a much more better indicator of whether or not supplementation is necessary or beneficial in your situation. Now, there's some other tests that you can do as well. Some doctors perform what's called a homocysteine test, and there's another one called MMA, methylmalonic acid. And these two tests can be kind of surrogate markers for vitamin B12 deficiency, although they're more accurate than serum. They have multiple meanings. So, for example, homocysteine, if it's elevated, could indicate not just B12 deficiency, but could also indicate folate, vitamin B6, choline, or vitamin B2 deficiencies. And so it's less sensitive specifically for vitamin B12. So using that can be done. It's not the best way to go about doing it. There are the flaws there. So this is where I go back to the INA. If you want to learn more about INA and INA technology, visit our post on Gluten-Free Society. We'll put a link up for you. But my advice to anyone who's considering higher dose supplementation for any great length of time, maybe you're trying to take supplements to improve your health in certain ways, but you're not sure. Maybe you've watched some of my crash course videos on different vitamins and minerals, and you're like, that sounds like me. That deficiency cluster sounds like my problem. Maybe I should try that nutrient. That's all fine and good. But if you test, you don't have to guess. There's no speculation with the appropriate type of testing. And so doing that is highly recommended if you're trying to really dial in what your body needs versus what you speculate might be helpful. Let's see here. Besides quercetin with bromelain, what is another protocol for seasonal allergies? Marie, my favorite combination of supplement for seasonal allergies is a few things. One, I'll just give you my priority. So in my practice, in my clinical practice, I use a product called Hist-Assist, and it's got quercetin and bromelain and nettle and vitamin C and other things in it. And what this helps to do is it helps to stabilize mast cells. Mast cells are the cells that release histamine in response to an environmental allergen. So we want to stabilize these as much as possible. It's going to have a regulatory effect on histamine release, and it can be very, very beneficial for those of you struggling with seasonal complications like allergies. But it's called Hist-Assist. Now, something else you can add to this, so go check that out. I'll put a link up to that product for you, but you can also do higher doses of vitamin C. I like Detox C. It's a powdered buffered form of vitamin C. We'll go 5 grams, sometimes higher in people, 5 grams a day. And split that out. Don't take it all at once. So take, a couple grams a couple of times a day or over the course of your day, because vitamin C taken at too strong of a dose can give you loose bowels, and you don't want to deal with that either. But also, beyond vitamin C, I like there's an enzyme called DAO, diamine oxidase, and this is an enzyme that degrades histamine, which is the end result goal, right? We're trying to either reduce histamine by stabilizing the cells, which is what we do here, or we're trying to break it down faster so that we're less symptomatic as a result of being exposed. So this would be another one. We have something called Ultra DAO at Gluten-Free Society that you can check out. So these would be kind of my top priorities. Beyond that, I would look at getting tested, if you're not already, testing for gluten and other foods. Why? One of the things that I have seen in 25 years of practice is a lot of times when people suffer from environmental allergy problems, the issue is they're eating food that their immune systems are reacting to, right? So the immune system becomes overwhelmed. And when the immune system's overwhelmed, what we end up with is heightened allergy type symptoms. So if you're eating a bunch of food that your body is looking at as foreign or looking at as an invader, the immune system is going to be distracted toward the food, and it's not going to be effective against allergies. And so I've heard this probably 1,000 times from patients, which is, Dr. Osborne, when I changed my diet, my allergies went away. The seasonal allergies I would have every fall or every spring, gone, right? So check the diet too, because if these things are happening to you, you may not need all this stuff. You may just need a diet change. And there's testing you can do. You can ask your doctor to run these types of tests. You can come to Gluten-Free Society as well. We offer genetic testing for gluten. We offer food sensitivity testing directly to people who are just trying to get that information, whose doctors are maybe not forthright in helping them to achieve those answers. So anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, Marie. Let's see here. Dr. Osborne, it's OT, but I'd like to know, off topic. I was thinking OT, overtime. I wasn't sure what you meant, Christiana, but I get it now. It's off topic, but I'd like to know whether there's an alternative to beta blockers. My mother's been taking it, and she developed a constant tingling and numbness in the tips of her fingers. I'm going to be talking in depth on Tuesday night about blood pressure and the different kinds of medications, including calcium channel blockers and alternatives. So yes, there are alternatives. Tune into that show and have your mom tune into that show. But one of the core problems with blood pressure, especially in the elderly, is something called polypharmacy. The irony is that in an effort to try to control people's blood pressure, the medicines actually contribute to increases in blood pressure over time. The other problem in the elderly is that in the elderly, this is just like a generalization, but blood vessels are typically more rigid. And so what happens a lot of times is doctors will say, okay, this person's blood pressure is high. They're not accounting for the age increase in vascular rigidity. And so they're over aggressively trying to lower people's blood pressure. And so they're using 1, sometimes 2 or 3 meds because they're trying to get you to what they're calling the therapeutic ideal range, which is 120/80. But there's ample research and publications that show that if you're aiming for this in the elderly, this is a horrible idea. 120/80 is a terrible idea because these people have more rigid blood vessels. In an effort to get oxygen to the brain, if you lower their blood pressure too much, you actually reduce oxygen delivery, not even just to the brain, but also to other nerves. And so this is one of the reasons why a lot of these people are going to develop tinnitus or numbness and tingling or neuropathy type symptoms. And so it may be that they're just being too aggressive with her, but chew on that for now. But join me on Tuesday night and we'll do a deep dive and you can garner a lot of that. Talking about beta blockers, I heard the other day that the meds are actually made of mold. Do you know if there's any truth? Well, many meds are made in cultures where they use molds and bacteria to derive the different chemicals. So yes, Belinda, to not all medicines, but many are used where we use microbes to generate chemicals. It's very, very common practice in lab. Question, collagen with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, how much collagen is recommended? Not too vain, but would like to maintain as much healthy collagen as possible as I age. I'm on the no grain, no pain, no dairy supplement, exercise, castor oil on the skin. Ideas? Thank you. So you're asking me how much collagen. You've got Ehlers-Danlos, and how much collagen should you be consuming? And so the simple answer to that is anywhere between 15 and 25 grams a day is a good goal. And that can be done with food, right? Remember, one of the best sources of collagen is skin, like eating the skin off of the, like if you're eating chicken, eat the skin. Broth, it's like bone broth, is a great source of collagen in the food itself. And sometimes, people kind of ignore these or throw them away or don't use them. So if you're looking for like just true great dietary sources, I'd go here. You can also use supplementation. If you're using something like we have a product called Ultra Collagen, and 1 scoop of that is about 12 grams. And what I like to do with this, because I use it myself, is I like to put it in a warm beverage. So whether you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, it blends right in. It actually thickens, just a little bit thickens liquid, but doesn't make it like gelatin. But it adds a layer of texture to the beverage, and actually is quite enjoyable without overpowering the flavor or the taste. But a lot of people find that putting that collagen in tea or coffee is a very easy way to get it in, because if you're where we see a lot of people struggle with protein is just their appetite and the quantity of food required. So that's an easy way. Let's see here. My INA test kit is on its way to Alaska. Can you walk me through what my nurse practitioner will need to do for the test? Awesome. So you're getting the INA. Gluten-Free Society has shipped it to you, and you want to know exactly what has to happen. Very simple. Your nurse practitioner, simply put, has to draw your blood. Take the vial. You can do 1 or 2 vials. Either one. And excuse me just a second. I'm just loading up a new screen here so that we have some more room. What did I do wrong here? Let's get out of there. There we go. She's got to draw your blood. So in the box, there's a vial. She's going to draw your blood. No special needle needed. She's going to draw it into the vial. She's going to put the proper sticker and label on it, put it back in the box, and then you're going to ship it off to our lab. It's really that easy. There's nothing complex about it. If she needs help when you get it to her, just have her reach out to our customer service and they can help walk her through it more specifically. Let's see. Do you know? Somebody's asking me about a specific lab, a Zoomer lab, a neural Zoomer lab. You have high levels of amyloid antibodies. So is it, okay, I think I understand your question. So Laura's asking, is high levels of neural antibodies linked to mold exposure? And the answer to that is yes and no. Depends. Can mold create an autoimmune response that leads to neural antibodies? It can, absolutely. No doubt about it. As a matter of fact, go back and watch some of my mold classes. I talk specifically about the research on mold sick patients and how we find in mold sick patients more neural antibodies than we do in other types of patients who aren't in mold by far. So there's definitely connection between nerve antibodies or nervous system immune antibodies and mold exposure. But there's also other things that can do that. I mean, for example, gluten can cause nerve antibodies. There's a group of researchers at Oxford who've been studying this for over 30 years. Like, one of the primary symptoms of gluten sensitivity has nothing to do with the GI tract. It actually has to do with the brain and the nervous system. It can cause neuropathy, it can cause cerebellar ataxia, and other nerve antibody development. So mold can do it, gluten can do it, other foods can do it, nutritional deficits that regulate the immune system can do it. So I don't know, I know that it's not a simple yes-no question, but if you're trying to make the connection, yes, mold can be related. I was adding Detox C to boiling water. Yeah, I wouldn't add it to boiling water. If you're going to use that, I'd add it to room temperature or even cold water, but room temperature ideally. You don't want to superheat vitamin C before you drink it. You're going to get some oxidation of it when you do that. So definitely better to take it with lukewarm or room temperature. If you just like it warmer, I'd go lukewarm. Would Hist-Assist be helpful for yeast producing oxalate degranulation? I think you're confused. Yeast producing oxalate. So you don't degranulate oxalate. When I say I think you're confused, let me give you clarity. And maybe I just misunderstood your question. So this is not an assault or an insult to you, but yeast in your body have the ability to produce oxalates. Now, what are oxalates? They're little tiny crystals that can lodge into your tissue, and they can cause inflammatory physical damage to your tissues, right? So if you get a bunch of oxalate crystal deposition happening in your kidneys, it would form stones, and those stones on their way out would physically damage the ureters, causing intense pain. But they can also form in your joints. We see this a lot in pseudoarthritis, autoimmune pseudoarthritis, where it's actually oxalate crystal deposition in the joints, creating the physical damage, inflammation. You can have oxalates. They've now research studies where they found oxalates depositing in the brain, contributing to damage of areas of the brain that produce dopamine, leading to Parkinsonian-like problems. So oxalates themselves are not something we degranulate. When we think about degranulation, we're really thinking about different types of immune cells. So you've got mast cells, but you've also got eosinophils. And so these types of cells will degranulate, and what that means is they're going to release chemicals or release compounds that have some type of effect. In the case of mast cells and eosinophils, their compound they're releasing is called histamine. So when you say degranulate, this is what I'm thinking, right? This is what the definition of that is. So when you're putting oxalate in the context of degranulate, that makes no sense to me. That's why I'm showing you the clarity here. So yeast can produce oxalates that can deposit in your tissues, leading to increases inflammation because of physical damage. But degranulation of immune cells of histamine can lead to inflammatory damage through a chemical means. So this is where this is physical damage. This is chemical inflammation. Same outcome, different processes. Maybe with that in context, re-ask your question and I can do a better job of answering it for you. New studies showing higher tyrosine levels in men are associated with a shorter lifespan. Is there another explanation like a missing? I would question the study. I mean, I haven't read that study, but I would question it. I'd like to see who it was done on, how it was measured, what were the controlling factors that they took into consideration. You know, the confounding factors like, you know, the sex, the gender, the weight, the health habits of the person, right? When you have these big studies that draw correlation, a lot of times they lack real world application for making a claim. And you have to be, that's why you have to be real careful when you take a study like that and try to extrapolate it onto everyone. Because glyphosate is in rainwater, is there an understood ppm allowed for organic farms to be certified as organic? No. That process has nothing to do with rainwater exposures so much as it has to do with direct pesticide application. Oh, I like that comment. Lars said, Hist-Assist and DAO made a huge difference in my perception of pain after getting out of mold. Yes, mold drives histamine release, right? And so when you've been in mold for a long time and you're making all that extra histamine, creating all that extra inflammation, sometimes reducing that histamine through Hist-Assist, through DAO can be extremely, extremely helpful. My dad is looking for some perspective on beetroot and its effects on the kidneys and diabetes. Would the benefits be sidetracked if he slow cooks the beets on low heat? Would the benefits be sidetracked? No, he would still get benefit from beet. I mean, one of the primary things, Shalene, that beets help with is nitric oxide production, which is a very powerful antioxidant, but as well a very powerful vasodilator that helps improve blood flow. So slow cooking those beets are not gonna completely negate the nutritional benefits of eating them. I like this comment. Success with B vitamins and magnesium for lymphedema. She's finally peeing off the extra fluid. That's great. Thanks for sharing, Melinda. Is there any natural remedies to lower LPA? Lipoprotein A, I assume you mean. Yes. How would we lower lipoprotein A? Well, the only studied ways that we know to lower it is combination of vitamin C and lysine. I talked about this a number of months ago and reported on the literature because there's not like major large-scale studies on this in humans, but there have been some nice reports where the combination of vitamin C and lysine can reduce LPA by about 50%. So if you're looking to try to reduce it, you know, the combination of vitamin C and lysine, and I would say 5 grams here and at least 3 grams here per day. And what I would recommend, this isn't medical advice, work with your doctor, but what I would recommend if it were my own, is I would take this dose, I would take it for a couple of months, and then I would repeat measure to see if I'm getting that reduction. Because, you know, LPA is one of those things, no medicines lower it, no lifestyle variables as far as we know will actually lower it. It's a genetic risk factor. And so the only thing that I've ever come across And I've seen this happen clinically where people took those doses and it did lower, but I haven't found anything else to be effective. Hi, Dr. O. About the biofilm in my gut, I have Candida overgrowth. I'll be using Bromelain, so I need to know how to take it, how much to take, for how long, and should I take lots of different kinds of digestive enzymes? I wouldn't just use Bromelain, wouldn't be my first choice. Now, Bromelain is a great proteolytic enzyme, but it just wouldn't be my first choice. I mean, if you were wanting to use something more comprehensive there, go back up, Mel, just a little bit. I would say, if you're trying to break biofilm down, we have a more comprehensive product called Matrozyme, which is what I will generally recommend. And the way that's taken is 6 capsules a day. So you take 2 at a time. So 2 capsules TID, if you understand that terminology. It's Latin for 3 times a day. 2 capsules 3 times a day on an empty stomach. And I would go for a period of approximately 10 weeks. Very safe to do, by the way. There's no major complications or side effects with proteolytic enzymes. But this is what I would recommend over just a standalone bromelain product. How can I remediate chronic migraines from APS? You gotta help me out with the acronym, Renee. When you say APS, what are you referring to? If you're talking about how do you overcome migraines as a whole, I've got some amazing crash courses on headaches and migraines that you can check out over at my YouTube channel. How or what can I do for chronic knee pain on the outside of the right knee? I stopped jogging, now just walking, also wearing knee sleeves. Don't wear knee sleeves. If you want to weaken your knees and create a bigger problem, wear braces. Braces that support the structure around your knee. I mean, unless you're very injured, braces actually will make, because they add extra support, they will actually weaken the tissue around the knee. And so when you take them off, you're actually going to be more predisposed to injuries. So it's not something I recommend to brace. But I would look at, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there because the knee's a complex joint. And there's a lot of potential things that could be driving that pain. So when you say on the outside of the knee, one of the things that I think of immediately is something called the IT band. So the IT band is a long band coming from the top of the hip down to the lateral aspect of the knee. So it's a band. I'm a terrible artist, so I'm not even going to attempt to draw it. But if you look it up on a Google search or on an internet search, you'll find a picture of it. And you'll know exactly what I mean. But a lot of times, this band has adhesions because why? So many people sit. Chronic sitting is one of the worst things that you can do for your knees. As a matter of fact, a lot of the times when I see people with knee pain, when we take away the sitting, and the way we take away the sitting is we recommend a desk treadmill, where we put a treadmill under the desk. And so and get you a small one. It's a small treadmill that you can roll in and out of the way, right? You can move it because you're not going to walk 8 hours in a day either. So, but you need to probably be on your feet walking a couple hours of your working day. And so what I like to do, even in my own day-to-day, because I do a lot of consultations on the computer, is I have an intermittent up-down policy where every other appointment that I have, I'm on my treadmill. In this way, I'm not sitting chronically. And also in this way, in my own personal anecdote, I had knee problems that just weren't being resolved with stretching. They weren't being resolved with other forms of treatment like laser treatment and stem cell treatment and other things. What resolved it was walking, was not sitting chronically. What helped resolve it was breaking up adhesions in the IT band. And that can be assessed if you have a good chiropractor, if you know a good physical therapist, even a good massage therapist can palpate that lateral aspect of your IT band and can find potential adhesions and really work you over. And that a lot of times will resolve lateral knee pain. But again, there's other things that can cause it, but that's one of the more common. Let's see here. I just joined in 17 minutes late. Sorry if you already answered. Is there a way to test glyphosate in our bodies? Yes, there's a way. There's tests that can measure glyphosate. We're actually getting ready to put one out because it's such a problem. To me, first of all, the number one thing you can do to reduce glyphosate, and if you guys haven't already gotten access to my glyphosate detox protocol, just type in glyphosate below and we'll send that to you. But one of the best ways is, and this has been researched, is to eat organic food. When people stopped eating conventionally grown produce and then started eating organic food, what happened to the glyphosate levels is they dramatically plummeted very quickly. This didn't take a long period of time. So your body's going to naturally push this stuff out, but it isn't going to push it out if you're retoxing. Remember, the number one rule to detox is don't retox. So get the diet squared away. Go buy from the local farmers. Go buy from the local co-op. If you're buying in the grocery store, look for organic and reduce that exposure. But yes, there's a way to measure for glyphosate as well. What do you think about hyperbaric oxygen for wound healing? I think it works extremely well. Precautions would be the atmospheric pressure being used. If you've got sensitive ears, sometimes the pressure being used is too much, too quick, and it can pop an eardrum. So that's one of the bigger precautions. And it's not that everybody going to do this has eardrum problems, but it's a possibility. So talk to the doctor or talk to wherever you're going to get it done. Just ask them about that. Let them know what your concerns are. And a lot of times they can take it slow for you and increase the pressure slowly to see how well you tolerate it. But it's always better to go lower pressure and see how you tolerate it than it is to go high pressure initially and then you have a problem. What do you think about, oh, see, I answered that one. Dr. Osborne, your book is amazingly helpful. Is Bromelain better than the one I already take? I don't know which one you take and what else is in it, but as I mentioned before, if you're going to take a proteolytic enzyme, bromelain's great, but I like a mixture because you get more synergism and you get more of an effect. What I recommend, Mara, is Matrixime. If some of you are chiming in there about well, this brand covers carbs, fats, and proteins. So let's think about enzymes for a different way. Now, I did a big interview with a doc I guess it's been a year, a little over a year, but it was a whole master course on enzymes. I think a lot of you are confused. When we're taking proteolytic enzymes, proteolytic means protein breaking or cutting. The role of a proteolytic enzyme, if you take it with food, it's going to digest or help you to break down or digest protein, meats, or proteins from plants as well. But it's breaking protein, right? So digesting protein. So this is if you're taking it with food, right? If you're taking it on an empty stomach, it's a completely different thing. Proteolytic enzymes have been shown to reduce inflammation. This stuff has been being used in Germany for many decades for the treatment of inflammation and other health issues revolving around inflammation. So proteolytic enzymes can absorb into your bloodstream, and they have what are called antifibrinolytic effects. They reduce how thick your blood is. They can reduce blood clotting. This is why you're seeing research studies now coming out on enzymes like nattokinase and serrapeptidase and lumbrokinase. These are proteolytic enzymes that absorb into your bloodstream and reduce blood viscosity, reduce inflammation. So depending on what you're trying to use them for, if you're trying to use an enzyme to digest your food, then the one you're taking with protease in it, because it's probably got protease and it's probably got lipase and amylase, that's going to be kind of a full spectrum, let's digest our food enzyme. But proteolytics are designed for this right here on an empty stomach. Or, and this is in the blood, but also there was a comment earlier about biofilms. The other thing that proteolytics can be very helpful for is if you've got a bacterial or a fungal problem, overgrowth or dysbiosis in your GI tract, these enzymes can be very, very effective at helping to break biofilm down so that you can rebalance your GI tract. Let's see here. Gina says, I'm on a clean, gluten-free diet, exercising, doing what I need for my rheumatoid arthritis, but my doctor now wants me to go on methotrexate, and I don't want to. She says if I don't, I'm going to end up in a wheelchair. I'm still thinking about it, but I don't really want to. I don't know what to do. What are your thoughts? Great question, Gina. This is not medical advice. However, I'm going to give you my thoughts. When a doctor, and this is, gosh, you guys have heard me say this before. When a rheumatologist says, you better get on this medicine or you're going to be in a wheelchair, fire them. Because here's what we know about doctors. They do not have the ability to predict your future. And any doctor that's using fear and scare tactics to get you on a very potentially dangerous medication, methotrexate is fraught with problems, and they're not willing to listen to you and they're not listening to you, you need to get a new doctor who will, first of all, because there's plenty of other options. Now, they can't predict your future. And so no one can tell you you're going to end up in a wheelchair and be right or accurate. There's no research saying that if you don't take methotrexate for your RA, you'll end up in a wheelchair. As a matter of fact, I've seen thousands of patients over the years in my practice be able to get off of methotrexate and biologic medications as a result of following the no grain, no pain protocol, looking at nutrients and looking at other trigger factors for RA. It's actually one of my specialties. It's why I wrote No Grain, No Pain, was to help people with painful autoimmune conditions. So diet can play a much greater role in this than most rheumatologists give it credit. So back to what we're talking about. So number one, they can't predict your future. Number two, methotrexate doesn't come without problems. It inhibits DNA, right? This is so it inhibits healing. And what we see a lot of times with methotrexate is it will reduce pain, but it will keep your disease progressing. It will keep your disease from ever really fully healing. And I've had many patients on methotrexate where it was the rate limiting step for their recovery, meaning we had their diet changed, we had their nutrition dialed in. They weren't getting they were hitting a plateau. They weren't like healing as well as they should have. And the rate limiter was getting rid of the methotrexate. So we had to get rid of it in order for them to heal. One of the things methotrexate does is it causes gut damage. It actually contributes to leaky gut. Now, if you understand autoimmune disease, leaky gut is a trigger for RA. There is your irony. The drug being used to treat your pain is triggering a phenomenon physically that's leading to or contributing to the very disease process that you're trying to get over in the first place. And so there are other problems with it, but one of the other problems with it is that it blocks folate. And if you know anything about folate, you can watch my crash course on folate if you don't, if you want to learn more. But folate is necessary to repair and synthesize cartilage. What's your joint made out of? This is what happens in RA is you get an immune reaction that's going on against your cartilage, and your cartilage is slowly being degraded. And when you're taking a drug that blocks the nutrient responsible for repairing that cartilage that's already damaged, it's kind of a catch-22. And what a lot of doctors will do, rheumatologists are going to put you not on folate. They won't put you on folate. They'll put you on a synthetic analog called folic acid, which no humans can properly metabolize. Folic acid actually contributes to a lot of problems, but that's what they use nonetheless. So those of you watching this, if you're on methotrexate and they have you on folic acid, a big easy switch would be to go to something called 5-MTHF, which is 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. This is a supplement that is folate, and it will work very well in lieu of that synthetic derivative that your body has a hard time using. Anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, but I've maybe given you some better context. Gina, have you read No Grain, No Pain? Have you had your vitamin and mineral levels checked? Have you also asked your doctor to measure for dysbiotic microorganisms. There's a few different kinds of microorganisms that we know are major triggers for RA, and Candida albicans is one of them, so that should be being measured. Pseudomonas is another one that should be measured. So looking at those can be very important, because those two microorganisms can create toxic compounds that can actually create molecular mimicry in your joints, driving the process of rheumatological disease. So you've got to look for dysbiotic microorganisms. You've got to look for nutritional deficiencies. With RA, vitamin D is one of the most common. Omega-3 is a very common one that we see. And you've got to change your diet. And the other thing that you could get measured if you're still struggling, if you're still symptomatic, is get measured for gluten sensitivity, get measured for food sensitivities. Because when you say I'm on a good diet, on a clean diet, that doesn't mean anything to me. And let me give you context around that. You could be eating perfectly wonderful food that's organic, that's free of pesticides and other chemicals, but your body can be reactive to clean food. We see it all the time. I've had cases of RA that were being triggered by blueberries, by broccoli, by beef. So you have to think in the context of, maybe this is clean food, but maybe it's not the right food for me. One man's food is another man's poison, and getting that measured can become a very important part of your journey to recovery. Scroll down a little bit more on that left. Is taking a good multivitamin with high B complex good enough? Because I'm taking extra B complex every 2 days as well. Is that too much? Hard to say. Have you been tested? I mean, this goes back to test versus guess. It may not be too much, but it also may be too much. Everyone's unique and different in that regard. So, you know, that's why you hear me say test, don't guess repetitively. Go up just a hair. I've started taking glycine in terms of stabilizing my cells after experiencing histamine release. I've also had extreme success with using taurine for increasing bile flow and assisting with estrogen removal from my system, as I have genetic tendencies to struggle with that. I'm curious as to why these little amino acids are so potent and why we just don't get enough in our diet. I've been focusing on improving metabolizing hormones as I've started BHRT, and I want to make sure my body is processing it all well. So yeah, amino acids are extremely powerful. And, you know, to answer your question about, you know, why we might not get enough in our diet, well, one is we've been sold a false paradigm around protein. You have to remember, the average doctor is less than 7 hours of nutritional training in medical school. And they're not qualified to answer questions about nutrition unless they've gone on to do advanced graduate coursework, and most haven't. Not to say none have, but most have not. You know, knowing that, what are they teaching in medical schools about protein? They're teaching that 0.6 to 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight per day is how much protein you should eat. That's about half of what you should be getting. You should be getting closer to 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day of protein in your diet. So half the country, if not more, are under the auspice, if they're listening to the nutritional advice of the mainstream doctors, are protein malnourished. You know, we look at the average American diet, and it's 70% carbs. And then you get 20% protein and maybe 10% fat. Because why? Because everybody's demonized fat. They said fat causes heart disease. Whatever you do, avoid all fat, and especially avoid animal fat because it'll kill you. Like, that's the message, right? And what has that led to? What do we have with this advice? Epidemic, metabolic syndrome, and diabetes, obesity, because it's the wrong fuel ratio. Think of it like a car. If you have a car that's a premium car, requires a premium fuel, and you put the cheapest gas and the oldest gas in it, the motor's going to knock and it's not going to perform at its highest level. And this ratio, this fuel ratio that most people are having or eating is not good for you. This ratio should look like 33, 33, 33, which means from a protein perspective, depending on how much you weigh, 100 plus grams a day. Now, when we poll and when we have patients do diet histories and we have them count their macronutrients, their protein, carbs, and fat for a week, on average, where do we see they fall? They're usually around 60 grams of protein per day. And what that tells me out of the gate, before I even do any testing, is I already know they're going to have amino acid deficiencies. So this is what you're talking about. I went a long way around to answer the question, but when you're not eating enough total protein, you're not going to get adequate amino acids, and you're going to be low in nutrients like taurine and serine and glycine, et cetera. There's 20 different amino acids. So you're going to be low in at least a handful of them. Most of the people that we test initially are low. This is one of the top categories of deficits that we see when we do testing. And when we start increasing this protein count to something more reasonable, guess what? These start to normalize, and we have better health as a result. And so a lot of people use amino acids therapeutically at high doses, taking them individually, or even sometimes taking like protein powders or amino acid blend powders. And that's fine and good. But I always like to make sure people are using their diet as the main tool to get adequate quantities of protein. Because if you're not, you're missing the boat. So all that being said, hope that answers your question. And maybe you're eating enough protein. There are other reasons why people don't have adequate amino acids. And one of them has to do with this term conditional essentiality. Conditional essentiality means under certain circumstances or situations, the need for amino acids increases. So it goes up. And an example of that, the most common example, simple example that I think everyone would relate to is this example right here. Under stress conditions. Well, what does that mean under stress? Well, maybe you got fired and you're looking for a new job, or maybe you've started a new exercise program and you're sore as the dickens and you're really struggling to recover. That's physical stress. Or maybe you didn't sleep well enough this month and you're stressed out, or maybe you've got a family problem, or whatever it might be. Stress comes everyone's way. In today's society, we have so much information coming at us all the time. It's like a funnel going into your body that's just dumping stress into you, because we have too much information that we have to process all the time. And that increases perceived stress, which is going to create a condition of essentiality, of greater need for these amino acids. So sometimes it's about knowing this, knowing who you are, knowing what kind of control you have over this and what you need to maybe do to downregulate that. Because when you're under stress, one of the things that happens is your digestion diminishes. Your ability to break down protein into amino acids to absorb them is reduced under stress. Why? Because what does stress do? It causes the part of your nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system to activate, turns it up, it ramps it up. And when you're in this mode all the time, digestion becomes blunted on purpose, because your body's not worrying about expending energy and going to your gut to help you process your food. It's worrying about putting blood into your muscles and into your brain so that you can think quickly and escape danger or fight danger. So when you're here, you're not here. And when you're not here, your need is not being met because you're not capable of digesting appropriately. We see this in a lot of people who, and oftentimes age gets the blame. Like you get older, they say, you digest less effectively. I say age has nothing to do with it, more than I say that damage accumulation over time is a form of stress that creates digestive disruption as people age, but the age in and of itself is not to blame. It's the actual choices of the person. It's the lifestyle of the person. And that's one of the reasons why we live by 6 fundamental factors to regulate stress. What are they? Eat real food, go to bed on time, exercise in moderation, get sunshine every day, drink clean water, and breathe clean air. Those 6 things will mitigate the best as you can your level of stress, taking you out of sympathetic dominance, thus improving digestion, and then making you more fuel efficient around amino acids and other nutrients. It's not just amino acids. Okay. Do you have a video that explains the breakdown of the gluten sensitivity test results? I took the test with my mom, 1 marker in common. I have HLA-DQ2 2 times on the report. I have dermatitis herpetiformis. Is this celiac? It is. Celiac genes are HLA-DQ genes. I said that wrong. Let me rephrase that. Celiac genes, what are they? If you have HLA-DQ2 or you have HLA-DQ8, the 2s and the 8s are celiac gene alleles or gene risk. So if you have 2 2s, which I think is what I heard you say, you had 2 2s, you have 2 times 2, right? That means you have your homozygous, if that's on the beta 1 gene, depending on I didn't see your report, but you're homozygous most likely for the risk for celiac disease. Now, if you've already been diagnosed with DH is gluten sensitivity. It is a gluten problem, 100% of the time. It is one of the manifestations of, it's a skin manifestation of gluten reactivity. And so we could make the statement that everyone with DH is celiac. That's a true statement. But your symptoms might not be in your gut. And as in essence, there's another term, we call that extra intestinal manifestation. So what does that mean? That means many celiacs have vomiting and diarrhea and stomach pain and GI tract problems, right? But many don't. Many have what are called extra intestinal manifestations. DH is an example of that because DH is happening in your skin. Another example of that might be cerebellar ataxia or vertigo. Another example of that might be autoimmune hepatitis. Another example of that might be Hashimoto's thyroid. Another example might be rheumatoid arthritis, since there's people listening with rheumatoid arthritis today. These are extra intestinal manifestations of gluten exposure. And but at any rate, going back to your question, you had 2 DQ2 markers. Those are celiac markers. Now, I do have a video that describes that. And if you reach out to customer service, they can certainly send that video over to you and you can watch it and get much better context. Is krill oil better than fish oil at reaching the brain? No. What's your thoughts about testing glyphosate, same as testing chemicals test? I mean, you can. I mean, my thoughts on it are eat organically, and I'm less worried about measuring for glyphosate unless you live next to a major farming operation where they're crop dusting the stuff or where they're spraying it. And now we have an environmental risk factor for it more than we have like a food-based risk factor. In those kinds of situations, we do test for it, Mara. Come down a little bit. Let's see, can you share your Candida show, please? The last time the link was for the Q&A. Do you have you got it? Okay. Can oxalates from yeast also deposit in the feet? Have been trying to figure out pain on the tops of the feet, not bottoms at all, for a year now. Yes, and also yeast can produce toxins beyond oxalate that can drive pain. So it's possible that you have oxalate deposition. You can ask your doctor to measure oxalate levels. It's not hard to do. Oxalic acid, 24-hour oxalate urine testing is widely available. What's the relationship between vitamin C and schizophrenia? What's the mechanism of action in this context? And what are the most important supplements? That's a big question. I'll give you the main mechanism because there's more than one. But this was not my research. This was Dr. Abram Hoffer. And if you're trying to learn more about schizophrenia, I highly recommend you go and read the work of Abram Hoffer. He's since passed, but he was one of the greats, in my opinion, one of the great minds in functional medicine. What actually we call functional medicine today, but really the OG term is orthomolecular medicine. But Abram Hoffer had theorized in schizophrenics that they had a metabolic defect. And so what would happen was there was a compound that was a side effect compound or an offshoot of adrenaline that people had a problem with. And that chemical is called adrenochrome. And so what was happening in his theory was that people were converting adrenaline into adrenochrome, and then they were getting stuck. And then adrenochrome is a hallucinatory, causes hallucinogens. And so they would have schizoaffective types of problems. And so his theory was that they weren't able to break that chemical down. And part of his theory was also that if he would use higher doses of vitamin C and niacin, vitamin B3, that these people could then break down that adrenochrome and the hallucinatory effect would dissipate. And so what he did to prove his hypothesis is him and another doctor by the name of Osmond Humphreys injected themselves with adrenochrome and then proceeded to hallucinate, and then used vitamin B, vitamin C and vitamin B3 to overcome the hallucinations. And they found that to be the case. And then they started using that in patients. And they found that many patients with schizophrenia, not all, because this is one aspect of why schizophrenia might exist, is this theory. And he found that in many cases, using higher doses of vitamin B, C, and niacin, I keep saying vitamin B, C, vitamin B and vitamin C, the B3 and C, would actually have an impact and an improvement in schizophrenic patients. Now, there's other things too, like beyond supplements. One of the things that I would suspect, based on my own experience and research, is gluten. One of the oldest names for gluten sensitivity is bread madness. And I've got some in-depth writing on this topic you can go check out at Gluten-Free Society. But bread madness, because gluten can produce morphine-like proteins that can also affect thought and can affect the mind, but it can also generate antibodies against neural tissue, creating hallucinatory effects as well. So we have, two big things that I would suggest you look into first and foremost. I think those will be the things that move the needle the quickest. What do I do to ease this deafening tinnitus? It depends on what's causing it. I'd get tested, get measured. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies can contribute to tinnitus. So that would be a good place to start. Food sensitivities can also drive tinnitus. It also would be a good place to start. And so, start there first. Do you have any nutritional supplement recommendations for autistic teens? Test, don't guess. Because the thing with the teen is they're not motivated to change. Typically, autistic teens, maybe it's different in your case, but usually there's no motivation. The motivation for change comes from an outside influence. So if you're talking about the autistic individual doesn't really care about change. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. So what I say is the motivation comes externally. This is usually mom or dad or some other familial influence, right? Saying, hey, do this so that you can get some kind of improvement. And when you don't have motivation built into the person who needs the change, what you get is almost zero compliance. And it's important that you understand that, because if I tell you, okay, yeah, every autistic kid should get methylfolate as a starting place and probably methyl B12 as well, and you start pushing these supplements on this individual who's not motivated to make change, and now they're developing what we call pill fatigue, right? Where they're like, oh man, I just don't want to take any more pills. Leave me alone. I feel fine. I'm okay. Then you're going to hit a brick wall. But if you test, a lot of times when individuals are unmotivated, testing creates knowledge that is specific, right? Unique to the person. And through that testing knowledge, you now have a blueprint. And with a blueprint that's unique to the person's chemistry, you get motivation. And that's what you're after. You want this person to be bought in, that you want them to want to do the things that you're saying do. And the way you get that is you make sure that they're tested appropriately so they can see specifically, this is what I need, as opposed to seeing you speculate what might be helpful for them. And this is true whether the person is autistic or whether it's a mom or a dad or a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or a family member that maybe they got cancer or heart disease, and you're like, well, just take the vitamin C and just take this and just take that and just change your diet. What usually happens when you try to enforce your nutritional lifestyle beliefs on a family member who's sick, who's not ready to make the change and not motivated to make the change because they're minimizing the problem in their own mind? I mean, I've had patients that I've released from care mainly because when they come in, they were forced in. Some family member brought them in. And when I ask them, why are you here? They're like, well, my mom or my dad or my daughter or my son, wanted me to come. So they didn't want to come. And when I ask them what was their health issue, a lot of times the answer I get is, oh, I'm perfectly fine. And then they say, except, and then they rattle off 4, 5, 6 different things that I'm like, that's not fine at all. Those are major problems. People normalize illness in their mind. They own it. This is when you hear people say things like, my fill in the blank RA, or lupus, or thyroid problem. When I hear people say my, what that means to me psychologically is that that person has allowed this illness to move into their brain, take up free rent space, and that they have already given up on any hope toward reversing these conditions because they own them. This is my disease. It's mine now. I have it. What they should be saying is, the symptoms that I'm expressing, I would really like to see go away. What can you guide me to do to help those symptoms go away? But they're owning it. And when a person owns the illness, what that tells me is they've accepted the illness, and generally they're not open to change. So when you have that as a scenario, and this isn't what you asked, but I think it's important. When you have that as a scenario, you really have to find a way to motivate them beyond, so that there's buy-in on their end. Because if they're not buying in on their end, and I mean buy-in as in financially buying in, I mean buying in as in emotionally buying into the fact that they need to make change, and that there's an objective reason as to why that change needs to be made, and not somebody's subjective opinion, who has their best interests. But frankly, most family members, when you're even mine, when you're trying to help them, dismiss any help that you might give because you're not their doctor. Anyway, long story there, but I hope you understand my meaning. How do you know if you have biofilms? There's specific tests that we run that give us indicators for it, Diana. outside of that, this goes back to test, don't guess. There are specific tests that we run where we're looking for biofilm or evidence of it. Does L-citrulline have any beneficial role in people with leaky gut? Specifically, can it help reduce intestinal stress or improve gut barrier function? I haven't seen anything directly on L-citrulline being like a magic bullet for leaky gut. In the family of amino acids, probably the most important amino acid in the gut from a leakiness type of perspective would be L-glutamine. L-glutamine is the primary fuel source for enterocytes. So those are the small intestinal cells. They use L-glutamine as their primary generator of fuel. So I would reach for that much quicker than I'd ever consider citrulline. I found relief from knee issues by doing backward walking. Yep, backward walking is a great activity and a great exercise for knee strength and knee integrity. Won't glyphosate and rainwater soak into soil and transfer into even organic foods? Yes, it will, but it's not the same as spraying it directly in large concentrated doses. So I don't know where that question was going, but yes, it will. But even still, buying organic is still a better option. Are there still active bromelain enzymes in dehydrated bits of pineapple core chunks? Possibly. It depends on how old it is and how dehydrated it is. I like this. So I can't tell you how many times I rebuked a doctor for predicting negative. The good ones smile and learn from it. The others I don't see again. Amen. Look, the job of the doctor is not to give you a doomsday, an ultimatum. Think of it as like a relationship, because your relationship is with your doctor. But in terms of other relationships, like if you had a boyfriend, girlfriend, or a spouse, like you don't give those people ultimatums. Issuing an ultimatum is like the nuclear option on any relationship. So when a doctor gives you an ultimatum, it's the nuclear option. Get out. Can glyphosate trigger mast cell activation? Certainly. How do you expect cleaning long-standing lymphedema to help an elderly woman? How do you expect clearing? I don't understand your question. How do you expect clearing long-standing edema? Maybe reword it. I gave a copy of your book to my doctor. Hopefully it will help her in turn help others. It saved my life. Thank you. You're welcome, Victoria. And thank you for sharing. That's what it's all about. I'm taking 2% or 2 drops of 2% iodine. Should I take selenium as well? Possibly. They have different functions. They both support thyroid function. I don't know what your goals are or why you're taking the iodine specifically. But hard to give you a more definitive answer than that. How do you test sensitivity to specific organic clean food apart from elimination? You do blood antibody testing. We measure IgE, IgG, and IgA in people. It's very accurate, but you have to differentiate. You can't just measure IgG. You also have to tease out IgG subtype 4, because some antibodies are beneficial, not detrimental. So, if you're trying to get accuracy, you run all of those different types of antibodies to determine what foods a person's immune system is going to perceive to be a potential threat and drive an inflammatory response. We offer that testing, Vlad, at Gluten-Free Society. If you want to go there, we'll put a link up and you can read more about it. What can one do if all steps to mitigate stress are not enough? Disastrous effects of stress on brain is as damaging as it is on digestion. It's always enough. It's always enough. You're missing something, Vlad. If you are, to your knowledge, doing everything you believe to be correct, and you're still overwhelmed, and stress is still destroying your health, then you're missing big pieces. I like to look at what are the aside from the 6 I mentioned before: food, sleep, exercise, sunshine, clean air, and clean water. If we look at chemical stress, because there's physical stress and there's emotional stress. Sometimes call this the triangle. So let's just start this here. I think this is helpful for you all. So give me just a second. When we think about health, when we think about inputs, so your DNA is kind of your blueprint, right? So your genes are a gift. The way I see it is they're a gift from God, not a curse. You're not born with bad genes. You're born with wonderful genes with very important functions. And the external environment, which are the walls of this triangle, is the external input, right? So there's, if we kind of loosely classify or broadly classify, there's emotional, spiritual input, there's chemical input, and there's physical input, right? And so all that is input to your genes. It basically says, here's what's going on in the environment, upregulate certain genes to accommodate these different things, so your body adapts. So the genetics adapt to the input from physical, emotional, spiritual, chemical, and then subsequently the DNA has an impact on you chemically, physically, and spiritually. But also your physical health has an impact on your chemical health. Your chemical health has an impact on your physical health. Your chemical has an impact on your emotional, spiritual. Your spiritual has an impact on your chemical, and your spiritual, emotional has an impact on your physical. So they're all connected, right? So we cannot separate. This is the bane of specialized medicine, where you have a rheumatologist and a cardiologist and an endocrinologist and a nephrologist, right? Is none of them can see the forest through the trees, because they're not thinking that they're thinking that you and your problem is only specific to the one organ that you're there to see them for, but they're not taking into the context that you're not the sum of your parts. You're so much more than that, right? So coming back to your question, Vlad, which is, what if you're doing everything and you're still struggling? Well, let's think about this one here. Because we all can pretty easily understand this one. This one, when physical capacity, so when your body's physically deteriorated or breaking down, maybe it's because you're sedentary. There's really not only two, but there's two main. One would be you're not active enough, you're sedentary, and that's leading to physical degradation. And two would be you are overactive, right? So you've over-exercised, and so your body's breaking down because you put it under too much stress and physically. And then there's a third here, and that would be trauma, right? So like a car accident, a broken bone, or something like that. These are all things that could impact this physical side. Your state of mind, your personal spiritual belief, all play a role here, as does your environment, the people you surround yourself with. You know, I'm sure most of you probably, if you had good parents, probably said you are who you hang out with, right? So if you hang out with people who are negative and constantly bringing you down, it's not going to help you here. But if you hang out with people who support you, love you, and care about you, and feed and put into you and give you their love and their heart, then, you know, it's going to affect you in a much better way here. And then if you're sound in your own spiritualism, it's also going to impact you here, because you have faith. Faith is very important, faith and hope, some of the most important things to begin the process of healing. And so then that leaves us with this chemical component. Now, there's four aspects to chemistry. And this is the one, right, by the way, this is the area that most people miss. Most people miss this area because they don't know how to begin. And because society has normalized the chemical inputs, the bad chemical inputs, as okay, right? So example of that is what we talked about on Tuesday would be glyphosate. Society has said falsely that this is perfectly fine, that eat it anyway. your body will just metabolize it. All the scientists behind it that lied about it, that don't care about you, have all worked against us to normalize this, right? So that's an example of how all the chemical exposures that we face today in modern society are just somebody's way of normalizing something that we shouldn't be being exposed to. So, but this can be measured. That's the great thing, is we can measure chemistry. And so this is where, if you're doing everything you think to be right, this is the answer to your question. Now, say all that to say this. What are the primary categorical measurements that need to be made? No, well, for chemistry, the first is food. One man's food is another man's poison. You want to measure those interactions because you could be eating foods that are driving your damage. Number two, you should be measuring your microbiome, specifically looking for something called dysbiosis, which is imbalance in the different microbes. This is what many people refer to as terrain, or it's part of terrain. It's not all of terrain, but it's not that certain bacteria or certain yeast are bad. It's quantitative. It's how out of control are they, and this can be measured. Because when certain microbes get out of control, they drive certain inflammatory toxin processes, and that can make us chemically sick. Number three, chemicals. And chemicals are found in our food, in our air, in our water, right? So we have to think in terms of air and water, we have to think of filtration. In terms of food, we have to ask ourselves, what are we allowing, right? Glyphosate was the example a moment ago, but food dyes, preservatives, additives, emulsifying agents, synthetic antioxidants, all the above are being put in our food without being properly tested. So if you're eating packaged food, one way to avoid this component is just to stop eating packaged food and just to eat real food, which goes back up to here. But specifically what I'm referring to up to here is food sensitivity, not necessarily chemicals added to your food, but we also do have chemicals. And this is also cosmetics, household cleaning products that you're using on a regular basis. Like, all of this becomes an assault on your body that you can't see. We could kind of put in this category, it's not a chemical of sorts, it's more of an energy input, but it's EMF, electromagnetic frequency fields, from cell phones and towers and everything else. But it's an invisible threat through the air, right? Through the air waves that has chemical inflammatory inputs on your body. So definitely important in that regard. And then number four would be nutrition. And not the same as food. When I say food, I'm saying, are you eating a food that your body may be reactive to uniquely? When I say nutrition, I'm really referring to vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and other nutrients like lipoic acid and choline that aren't classified as vitamins, but are nutrients that your body needs. CoQ10 fits in that category. But does your body have adequate quantities of these? Because if you have vitamin, mineral deficiencies, amino acid deficiencies, your body's going to start failing you, right? So these are chemical inputs, because all this is chemical. And think about how we want to really define this. This is microscopic in nature. We don't see it happen. When we eat a food we're reactive to, we don't see the chemical inflammation inside of our organ, inside of our bloodstream where it's taking place, but it's measurable, right? So we think of chemistry as microscopic, but you measure these four categories. Once you know what that is for yourself, this goes back to my philosophy of test, don't guess, measure those four categories. Now go back and make the changes that you find are necessary. So if you're reacting to 3 or 4 of your favorite foods that you eat on a daily basis, you're going to have to remove those. If you have vitamin A deficiency and zinc deficiency and B vitamin deficiency, you need to get more of those nutrients into your diet. If your body's reacting to certain chemicals or overloaded with certain chemicals, you need to get those things out of you, or you need to avoid being exposed to them further as much as you possibly can. You control what you can. And if you have dysbiosis, then that needs to be dealt with. So those are the things you're probably missing. And I get this every week. A lot of you say, I'm doing everything in No Grain, No Pain, but I'm still struggling. Read the last chapter, because what I just described to you for free without having to buy the book at all, is the last chapter of No Grain, No Pain, which is the fundamental premise of functional medicine. So when you hear people talk about what is functional medicine, that's functional medicine. It's looking for the root underlying causes of what's driving the inflammatory illness. These are the chemical things that can be measured. But you also need physical and spiritual emotional assessment as well. Those are equally as important. So when you take all of that into context as a whole, now you have a blueprint that's unique to you. This is why you can take 1,000 people with RA, you can take 1,000 people with lupus and fill in the blank on the disease. They're not all going to have it for the same reason. They're going to have their own unique patterns, their own unique triggers. And ultimately, this is why medicine doesn't work, because these people aren't sick for the same exact reasons. There's different triggers for different people, and medicine doesn't take that into context. Medicine is trying to take a hammer and hammer a square peg into a round hole and say one size fits all. Medicine is chemical manipulation of symptoms to appease a person's symptoms so they can have an improved quality of life without taking into the context why the disease exists. To me, in my own personal philosophy, when you medicate your symptoms away, it's basically a form of lying to yourself. You're allowing yourself to continue to make the same choices, the same behaviors that have driven you into a state of disease, because you're not sick because you have bad genes. You're sick because the choices around your genes are leading to the expression of symptoms, and the symptoms are just your body's way of trying to tell you you need to figure out how to do something different. Blocking it with medicine doesn't serve you. It enslaves you. It enslaves you to the belief pattern that this is your disease and you own it, and only this medication can manage it, and only your doctor can help you do that. It's the paradigm that we've built. We've taken all the power away from people, and we've made them into victims, into slaves of outsourcing the most important decisions about their health to a complete stranger who's probably not healthy, never really studied health. In medical school, you study pathology, you study how to treat pathology with drugs and surgery, neither of which are permanent solutions for lifestyle problems. Medicine works great and it shines in acute care. If you got a bone broken and you get your fracture reset, God bless the orthopedic surgeon who took care of you. If you're on the deathbed because you've got a massive infection, you need an antibiotic, God bless the hospitalist who figured that out for you and got you on the right track. But if you have autoimmune disease or chronic inflammation, there's not a damn medicine in the world that is doing anything for you except lying to you and keeping you enslaved in a position where you're not empowered to have any kind of meaningful impact over your future course, over your future health. Anyway, long way to answer the question, Vlad, but I felt like you needed to hear that today. I used to get drunk randomly, no alcohol, and never understood what was going on. Auto brewery syndrome, most likely yeast. Let's scroll down. How do you recommend getting tested? Do you offer any sort of mail-in test result analysis? We offer, at Gluten-Free Society, we offer food sensitivity testing. We also offer genetic testing for gluten sensitivity and INA nutrition analysis testing. We don't do the analysis when you buy online. We will send you informative information about your test results and have loose guidelines around what might be helpful for you. But if you're looking at having like individual consultation, that's something you need to reach out, Jay, to my clinic for, and you can set up a time with my staff there. We'll put the information up on the screen for you to do that. If testing insurance covered labs don't do good testing for nutrition, could it also be true that they don't test the microbiome? Yeah, it's very true. You're not going to get, unfortunately, look, this is just my opinion. You can judge me how you will for it. Medicine's not designed to cure people. It's designed to manage people. And so a lot of the testing is involved in management, not involved in trying to find root cause. So a lot of these types of tests, you're not going to see insurance cover it. I mean, I've shared this with you guys before. nutritional testing, I think, is because of me. Years ago, 20 years ago, we were doing so much nutritional testing, and I used to bill insurance for patients. Well, insurance companies started coming back on me and saying, hey, you know, you're doing too much nutritional testing and we want refunds. We're not going to cover it anymore. They ended up writing a position paper on not covering nutrition testing after I told them that we were going to keep running it. Insurance, unfortunately, at the end of the day, they get to write the policy, and then you're signing a contract with them, not with your doctor, right? So they have a lot of say because you've given them that power. And that's the problem. In my opinion, most people, not everyone, but most people should throw away their insurance. They should quit paying for it. Because all you've really done is you've enriched an entire industry to limit your capacity to have a meaningful relationship with a real doctor who actually cares. And now I say you, I'm not trying to blame you, but we as a society have created a paradigm where we've mediocreized medicine because insurance and what insurance will cover has become so restrictive for doctors that they're handcuffed. I know when I was taking insurance, the insurance companies, they put a big red flag on my information online. So like on Blue Cross Blue Shield's website, if you found Dr. Osborne on their website, they had a big asterisk next to it that said, don't use this doctor. He does things, you know, outside of the standard of his peers, because I dug deeper and I looked further at things than many of my peers. And so they basically tried to ruin my reputation. That's what they do. And when you're paying them, you know, thousands of dollars a month, and then when you get to your doctor and you realize, well, my insurance doesn't really cover meaningful care. It covers management of my illness to keep me on medicine for the rest of my life, but it doesn't really cover meaningful care. You start questioning whether or not it's even something you need to have. What improvement do you expect when you finally resolve lymphedema that an elderly woman has experienced for a long time? I'm not sure. Improvement, I mean, you expect to see the lymphedema go away, and in that regard, they can walk better, they can exercise better, they can mobilize better. So I mean, there's a tremendous amount of physical improvement that and their quality of life that can occur when the lymphedema diminishes. Are ancient wheat berries safe for those with gluten sensitivity? I don't recommend them. I don't recommend eating any grain at all if you're gluten sensitive. I had a NutriVal test. It was comprehensive at my functional practitioner office. Is that too faulty? Yes. That test relies on parameters around nutrients that can change from one meal to the next. And that's, you know, Betty, I've done numerous videos on nutritional testing and the flaws of what many practitioners use when they're using urine and they're using serum to measure quantitatively how much of a nutrient is present, and hair is the same. It's a very, very misleading test. It doesn't tell you about your long-term nutritional storage or needs. It tells you kind of what you ate in your last meal or two. And so in that context, it doesn't really give you any great information to move forward with. Frustrating that I cannot expect to get the health needs from insurance. I guess all I'm paying for is testing and emergencies. All you're really paying for is emergencies, and I don't know, do what you feel like is right for your family. But I'm of the opinion that insurance is a total waste of money. And I would rather take that money, put it aside in a special account. So whatever I would pay for insurance, and put that aside in a specialized account, a rainy day fund, if you will, so that if I had the need, if I had the emergency, or I had something come up, I would have the money there to, you know, if I needed to go to the ER, needed to go to the hospital for some type of acute care need, I would have that money set aside. But I mean, there's a reason why they're rich and most people aren't. It's because they're taking your money and pulling their wealth, and then the service they're delivering as an exchange is shit. Excuse my language, but that's just the reality. Scroll up just a little bit on the left. What is the best thing to keep your brain healthy? There's a lot of things. What I just said offers pretty good context. No periods. How will I know if I get to menopause? Well, you can ask your doctor to measure LH and follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. Abnormalities of those hormones at a certain level is an indication for the fact that you're in perimenopause or menopause. Scroll down a little more, Mel. Do you have any tips for somebody with bipolar? Get tested. Boy, this is my family to the T, bipolar, schizoaffective. The biggest issue, I'd say the biggest tip I could give you, Katie, would be read No Grain, No Pain and follow the diet. Even myself personally, like if I were to be eating gluten, my moods would be so aggressive and my swings would be so up and down. Like I'd flip up and down, bipolar, so to speak. Many of my family members are the same way. Now I'm pretty much the only one that doesn't eat gluten. And I'm very even keel at this point in my life. But there was a time in my life where I was so quick to anger, you'd want to be 100 feet away from me. That's not the case anymore. And it's not because I've softened with age. It's because I've quit eating gluten for the last 25 years, and it's stabilized my mood. So start there. It's a great place to start. Diet is always the best place to start. 1, it's free. 2, if it doesn't work, you haven't lost anything. And 3, if it does work, you've gained everything. I took IgG and IgA tests. The only things I didn't react to was lamb, pork, and wheat. You're probably in mold. If you reacted that aggressively to all the things in the test, the likelihood that you're in mold and that your immune system is in hyperdrive and starting to react to most things you're exposed to is a very real construct. I see it all the time when we test people and they have, 30 plus food reactions, and their diet has to become so restrictive, it's almost carnivore-like. It's generally because they're in mold. And usually in those cases, we search for it. We look for the mold. We do testing to determine it. And I've not yet seen a case where that was true, where that person wasn't being exposed to major environmental mold. So this answers 2 of the questions there. One was my thoughts on the allergy result, but the other was thoughts on going carnivore. Most of the people I know that went carnivore they have background mold problems I think they haven't yet discovered. That's just my opinion. And maybe there are people out there that are doing great on carnivore that don't have background mold problems. I can't make that statement in 100% confidence because I haven't seen every patient in the world that's on a carnivore diet, but I can speak from the experience. And the experience is mold is there 100% of the time when we have hypersensitivity, hyperallergenicity syndromes. Gina says, I need you as my doctor. I'm tired of the RX pushing doctors. I like getting to the root, so I think it's best I call your office. I think that's a good idea. If you really want to get to the root, get a hold of us. RA is something we're real confident with and have seen really fantastic outcomes with. So, not knowing is the biggest problem I think that most people face when they're struck with an autoimmune rheumatological disease. And so, anyway. You're still a firecracker? Well, that can be. I can get mad, certainly, but just even. Jay says, my son was like that as a small child. He would rage constantly. Getting him off gluten and other main allergens helped so much, and it does. What would be the most likely culprit for facial pustular rosacea if antibiotic treatment clears it temporarily? Well, you probably have dysbiosis. A lot of times we'll see gut dysbiosis leading to rosacea. Remember, microbes can translocate. And so what does that mean, translocate? They can, if you have an imbalance in your GI tract and that causes permeation or leaky gut, translocation means they can move from your gut and then they can go systemically and throughout your body. And that can manifest in your skin as well. So if taking antibiotic or creams that are antibiotic in nature is clearing it up, you know, I would really strongly encourage you to look for dysbiosis. What's your thoughts on going completely carnivore? I did a whole show on the carnivore diet. I'd encourage you, Thurston, to check out. I think it depends on the person. In many cases, it can be very helpful. In some cases, longer term can start to become detrimental. And it's a case-by-case basis. I have several patients currently on a carnivore diet, as I mentioned before, mainly because they're in mold. And they get the best relief on that diet until they can get the mold remediation under control. Does your clinic work with other doctors in other cities to get the lab workup that's needed? Yeah, that part's easy. You just reach out and we can guide you in that right direction. We also do Zoom consultation as well. Okay. Man, it's an hour and a half in. Time always flies. Really appreciate you guys showing up on a weekly basis. And I'm hoping that this information that you're taking away from the show is super helpful for you. Do me a favor. Our mission is to save 100 million lives. Share this with somebody you care about if you think it'll help them, if their mind is open to receiving it. You can also come visit me at Gluten-Free Society. You can sign up there for our free newsletter, and I'll send you a bunch of free information on how to navigate inflammation and autoimmune conditions, chronic conditions with diet, exercise, and other lifestyle factors and parameters. And as always, I appreciate your patronage. If you're looking for great supplements, if you're looking to do some lab testing, greatly appreciate it when you use Gluten-Free Society. We don't take in sponsors. You know, I don't have a conflict of interest in terms of people, you know, asking me to make recommendations to you that aren't really true to my heart. So our sponsor is Gluten-Free Society. So when you use our supplements, our lab testing, and our products, that pays the bills and keeps the lights on and allows me to come back week after week helping you. So appreciate your patronage as always. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. I'll be back on Tuesday. We'll be doing a deep dive on blood pressure this week. So hope to see you there. That's Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we'll be back again next week on Thursday at 12:30 Central Standard Time for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Take care.